A soldier must obey orders from his commanders. But what if the command was to kill an innocent person? The hero of our story found himself in this kind of situation. But even after all these years, he still can't forgive himself. How did it happen? Let's find out. Chris Kyle was born and raised in Texas. Even as a boy, he knew exactly what he wanted to be when he grew up. Chris was destined to become a Navy SEAL. That's why when he finished school, he immediately went to serve in the war against terrorists. And soon enough, he became one of the best snipers in the Army. It was said about him that you could hit the target before the target even knew there was a sniper there. There were so many of these missions under his belt that later he was even awarded the Bronze Star Medal for it. But one day, Chris got the order that haunted him for the rest of his life. It was during the war in Iraq. Chris's team had been tracking down a group of insurgents for several days already. They finally managed to locate them in a building in the city. Of course, no one knew for sure whether the people inside were really dangerous criminals or just ordinary citizens. But Chris's team received an order to eliminate the targets by any means necessary. So the sniper took his position and looked through the scope of his rifle. He saw a man, woman, and 2 children standing on the second-floor balcony of the building. I clearly saw a woman holding a child by the hand and talking to another man, probably her husband and the 3rd child nearby. It seemed like they were just an ordinary family enjoying the warm evening, Chris recalled. But he had to make a decision, eliminate the target or not. He asked for clarification over the radio, but no one answered him. That's when I realized that the lives of those people didn't matter. For some reason, they weren't considered human anymore. They were nothing more than targets, the sniper admitted later. Of course, Chris couldn't just shoot them without asking any questions. He decided to wait until morning and see what happened next. Maybe then it would become clear whether they were good people or bad. But the order had to be carried out. So at 7 a.m. sharp, Chris pulled the trigger. All 4 people on the balcony were killed. Later, when the police conducted an investigation, it turned out that it was indeed a family, and they had nothing to do with the insurgents. The sniper felt terrible. It was a massacre. I remember thinking, what have I done? But since the order had come from above, no one punished him for what happened. Moreover, he was praised for completing the mission successfully. But this didn't make things any easier for him. Chris left the Army and tried to start a normal life. But something was bothering him. He had nightmares every night, heard the screams of those people in his sleep. He began to drink heavily, and he was close to losing his family. That was when he decided he needed help. Chris started seeing a psychologist, but that didn't really help. He still had nightmares. The only thing that gave him some relief was writing. And one day he decided to write a book about his experiences in the war. To everyone's surprise, this book became a bestseller. Chris became famous all over the world. He traveled to different talk shows and gave interviews. In one of the interviews, he said, "There are nights I still wake up in a cold sweat, thinking about the faces of those Iraqi civilians. You carry a lot of that stuff with you forever. Some memories are burned into your mind." Meanwhile, the widow of one of the men killed by Chris couldn't forget what had happened. Her name was Fatima, and she lived in the same building where the tragedy occurred. When the house was cleared after the shooting, she wasn't there. She was visiting relatives in another city. But when she returned home, she found her husband and 2 children dead on the balcony. Since then, she couldn't forgive the sniper who destroyed her family. Some time passed. Chris Kyle went on with his life and married. He even had children of his own. But one day fate decided to play a cruel joke on him. Chris was in Texas with his friend and fellow Navy SEAL Eddie and their wives. They decided to go to a local bar. But when they arrived there, it turned out to be crowded and noisy. We didn't want to spend much time there. We were planning to go somewhere else. But then we heard a couple of guys behind us saying, "Oh yeah, let's go to the bar where those Navy SEALs hang out. Those guys are probably heroes and probably deserve a drink." I don't know. Eddie and I exchanged glances. We understood everything. Those people meant us no good, so we decided to leave. Chris shared. Then suddenly a man from the other table yelled, "Hey, you're that damn sniper, aren't you?" Chris was stunned. He couldn't believe that this man recognized him. I was scared. I thought he might pull out a gun. But instead, he just stood up, walked over to my table, and punched me right in the face. I fell to the floor, and my nose started bleeding. I was furious. I wanted to get up and beat this guy to death. But my wife grabbed me by the collar and pulled me back. Then that guy sat back down. Hey. He continued drinking with his friends, laughing and pointing at us from time to time. My wife started crying. I could see the fear in her eyes. And then I realized I needed to calm her down. I told her everything would be fine, that those people wouldn't hurt us, but she still wanted to leave. Then I called the waiter and asked him to call the cops. The guy who attacked me noticed that I had called the police, and he got pissed. He started yelling that he was going to kill me. I knew he was serious. I was afraid he would take out a gun or something, and then he stood up and moved closer. At some point I thought he was going to attack me again, or something worse.
Ow.
But instead he reached out his hand and said, "Let's shake on it."
Ow.
I hesitated for a second, but then I shook that guy's hand. It felt like an eternity. And when he let go of me, he turned around and walked away. Then the police arrived. I told them what had happened, but they just laughed at me. One of the cops even said, "Come on, buddy, you're a Navy SEAL. What do you expect?" After that incident, Chris's life turned into hell. It seemed that everyone in the country knew about him. He couldn't walk down the street without someone taking a picture of him. He couldn't even enter a regular bar.
Ow.
Every time he did, there were loud arguments and fights.
Ow.
Chris began to hate his life and wanted to end it. But he couldn't do it because he had a family. So he decided to leave them and move to another state. But no matter where he went, the people there knew who he was. And all this time, Chris didn't know that the woman whose family he killed in Iraq was also looking for him. After the tragedy, she learned that the killer was a U.S. military man, and she dedicated her entire life to finding him. Finally, she managed to trace him and went to the state where he lived with his family. One day, Chris was walking along the beach with his dog when he heard a woman's voice calling his name. He turned around, but he couldn't see anyone. "Chris," the woman shouted again. "Chris, you bastard! Why'd you kill my family?" "Why?" The sniper froze. He was afraid to turn around and see the angry face of the woman who lost her family because of him. But when he did, he saw an old woman crying. "Who are you?" he asked. "Don't you recognize me, Chris? It's me, Fatima. I'm the woman whose family you killed. And now you have to answer for what you did." The old woman pulled out a gun and shot the sniper right in the chest. When the police arrived at the scene, they found out that Chris had died instantly. No one knows what the old woman did with the gun afterward, but the sniper's death caused a public outcry. People supported the old woman because they knew what a monster Chris was. His death made headlines all over the world. To this day, no one knows where Fatima is and what happened to her after she killed the sniper. What do you think of the old woman's revenge? Write about it in the comments. And that's all for today. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Catch you next time.